So, please welcome our next speaker, Lars Trieloff, Principal at Adobe.
Thank you. Okay, hello, everyone. My name is... No, that's not right. Actually, Hartmut is very sorry and can't be here today because he's our CTO. That means he has to close deals. So instead, you have to talk to me. My name is Lars Trieloff. Just think of somebody who likes horticulture very, very much. So who am I and what I am doing at Adobe? To answer this question, let's zoom out a bit. And think of the biggest technology companies in the world that you can think of, right? And now think of all of them that start with an A, right? No, not Alphabet, not Apple, but Adobe. It's number 3, right? So, and now think of all the Adobe products that you are using, that you are familiar with. And again, we're zooming in. No, it's not Photoshop. It's also not Lightroom, fortunately. It's also not, sorry, I can't help you with your how to convert to PDF problems. But what I can do is I can help you with content management, in particular web content management, and this is Adobe Experience Manager. Adobe Experience Manager is a little-known product for the simple reason that we mostly sell to other Global 2000 companies. EY, for instance, is one of our customers. And not sure if I can say that. And Adobe Experience Manager has a really, really long history. That history is going back 30 years. I'm going to talk about this a bit, but while we are at the topic of ancient history, what's my ancient history? So, long time ago, I studied software. It started as software systems engineering, and Jürgen knows how old that is, and then it turned over to IT systems engineering at Hasso Plattner Institute. So I have an engineering background. I entered Day Software, small Swiss company building web content management systems, in product management. Then later on left, went to a German startup called Blue Yonder, where I ran product marketing. And then I came back to Adobe, and now I'm doing all of the above. That's why my job title is principal, and that's why I reserve the right to do everything that's interesting. And the most interesting thing to be in at the moment is new product development. And let's move on. How do we do new product development at Adobe? And the case study I have here is about a new version of Adobe Experience Manager. And I mentioned there are 30 years of history with Adobe Experience Manager. In this sanitized slides, it's going back to the year 2000. It's actually a longer history than that. It started with a product called Open Web 2.0. Why did it start with the 2.0? No enterprise customer wants to buy a 1.0, right? So that's why we started with the 2.0. And at some point in 2010, Adobe acquired this little Swiss company and turned $1 million business into $1 billion business for web content management. A big part of this was our transition from on-premise software to managed services, right? So running, not just selling software to our customers, but running it for them. And the next step up from that was Adobe Experience Manager as a cloud service, which basically means instead of running a dedicated instance for every customer, we now have a cloud service where we have containers and it's super scalable and it's automatically updated. And the last iteration of this is turning it from a cloud service into software as a service, right? Which means fully multi-tenant, super scalable, super fast, and super simple. And this is the product that I've been working on for the last 5 years. So what does this look like? The first thing is we started extremely small. So this is a small room in the Salt Lake City Public Library, and our first hackathon, where we had a couple of developers. Actually, the team hasn't grown much beyond that since then, coding and hacking a first version of what came to be the new product. And at the end of the hackathon, we had a running prototype. And we were sitting together eating pizza and thinking, we need to change the entire architecture. And that's something that we did continuously, right? Because as you're developing software, you're learning about software, and you're understanding the system better, and you're understanding requirements better. So having the ability to iterate and having the ability to adapt to changing needs is something that is super essential. And this is obviously much easier when you have a small team that is able to communicate effectively instead of going through a large organization. And on the other hand, in software and in general, there's something called Gall's law. You're probably familiar, which means a complex system that works has to be evolved from a simple system that worked, right? And you can never start with the complex system that works because complexity itself is the enemy of working software, right? So start with something simple and let it evolve. And when it stops working, that's the point where you realize you have to change direction. We realized this during the 5 years of new product development many, many times. And the key to adoption is being able to realize this and changing direction. Step number 2 is honor thy elders, honor thy mother and father. In our case, this means knowing about the history of web content management. One of the advantages that we had was that the team that is building this software is constituted of, on the one hand, the CTO of Day Software, so the person who wrote version 1.0 of one of the first commercial web content management systems. Another person in the team is developer number 2. Another person in the team is the person who wrote the HTTP specification. So we have a lot of organizational knowledge within the team, which allows us to take a look at past successes and past mistakes, and then decide whether we want to repeat them, whether we want to improve on them, or whether we want just to ignore them. Right? So just because you have a long history doesn't mean that everything that you do in the new version has to be done the same way as it has been done in the old version. But you can take, and you should take, and you must take the lessons learned from that history. The longer you can preserve this organizational knowledge, the faster you're going to move forward. Lesson number 3 for us was that there's a very, very clear history. There's a very, very clear hierarchy of needs. And the first one is somewhat nuanced and counterintuitive. Right? Normally, you would say the most important thing about software is, well, and everyone wearing a suit in here would say the most important thing in software is customers. Actually, there's something more important than customers, and that's users. Because users and adoption by your users will decide if the software is going to be successful. This is especially the case for us, where we have a recurring revenue business model, right? Which means, yeah, we might be able to close the first round of the deal, but when it comes to renewal 3 years later, and there are no users of the software internally, when it has just been shelved, the customer is not going to renew. It's going to be churn, and that's going to make our CEO very unhappy. So there's another trick to this, which is use is more important than users. Right? So you need to look closely what your users are doing and pay attention to the things that they are not doing. And the things that they are not doing, this is where I would apply Occam's razor, right? The features that are not in use are the features that have to go. Cut them out ruthlessly. So users are also more important than customers, and most importantly, customers are more important than developers. Right? We've gotten so used to the fact that developers are a scarce resource that, on the one hand, we often prioritize developer needs above customer needs. This is not something that should happen in product design. Right? Your users and your use comes first. Your developers are there to serve that need. That doesn't mean that life has to be miserable for developers. Quite the opposite, and I'm going to talk about this. Next point is disintermediation, and you see the doctorate hat. I need to make a bit of use of my university degree. So disintermediation means connecting the people who are in charge, right? And in reality, there are two people who make a software system tick. There's, on the one hand, your users, the people who are using it, and on the other hand, there are developers. How many layers of interaction do you have between your developers and your users? If a user is having a problem, what do? They open a support ticket. That support ticket is going, at least in enterprise software, to a technical account manager, maybe to a case escalation manager, from where it's going to the account manager, from where it's going to the support manager, from where it's going over to product management, director of product management, senior product manager, group product manager, senior product manager. Here's your product manager. The product manager is talking to the senior engineering director. Senior engineering director, director of engineering, senior engineering manager. And here's your developer. How much information has been lost in that process? Almost all of the information. And how much time has been wasted? Typically weeks. So what we are doing is we are disintermediating. And this means connecting our developers directly with the users who are using the software. And at Adobe, we did something that we called shift left. Shift left meant introducing a unified engineering organization. One part of this was developers are now responsible for writing their own tests, right? Dissolution of a separation between engineering and QA organization. The next shift was developers are also responsible for their own operations. This is what we know as DevOps. Shift left again means developers are also talking directly to users and providing support. And this is surfacing a lot of the pain points that users are experiencing straight to developers. Right? So we are inflicting a lot of pain on developers. I realize this. And normally you would say, well, inflicting pain on developers, that's just cruel. Why are you doing this, Lars? And what does the pain look like? Right? The pain looks like build, test, deploy, observe, operate, respond, support. You are on call. You're not on call all the time. But I can tell you, this is my pager duty. I'm on call right now. I'm in an active on-call shift right now, and probably nothing is going wrong. But if something's going wrong, this talk is going to be over right this minute. So there's a lot of pain in this process, right, if you're on call. But giving developers autonomy is the fix for this. Giving developers the autonomy to address the pain points that they're experiencing. And the pain points that they're experiencing are the pain points that their users are sharing thanks to disintermediation. Right? So what can we do? We can automate deployment. We can automate operations. We can eliminate almost all need to respond. Right? I wouldn't be here on this stage if I would fear that my pager is going off, because on average, I'm on call. I'm on call every single night, and I'm on call every 2 days. My pager has gone off exactly one time this year. Interestingly, during my sister's wedding, while I was the wedding photographer. It was an easy fix. Didn't miss any good shots, but it told me an important thing. It told me an important thing was we had a flaky monitor. Right? So my pager went off not because our system was down. It was because the monitoring system went down. So the first thing I did when I came back from the wedding was fixing our monitoring system. Right? I didn't have to ask for permission. I just could do it because I have this autonomy to engineer the pain away. And that is a really, really important part of this. Don't inflict pain on people who cannot fix the pain. So give developers the ability to fix the pain. The next lesson is that architecture follows culture-tecture. And you might say, culture-tecture, that's a terrible neologism. Who came up with that? I did. Sorry for that. So we realized that just like you are familiar with Conway's law, right? Which basically says that organizations are doomed to replicate their own organizational structure in the software that they produce. And if that's the case, then we can architect the organizational structure so that we, in the end, get the software architecture that we want. And the same is true for culture. We can engineer the kind of culture that makes it a great place to work and a great place to create new software and to create new products. Let's quickly talk about budget. There's an innovation budget. And the easiest way to think about the innovation budget is there are two sides of the coin, right? Number one, how many new and interesting things do you want to work on? Do you want Gen AI in your product? Yes. Do you want to have mobile in your product? Yes. Do you want to have graph databases in your product? Yes. Do you want to be on call for all of these? Nah, probably not. Right? So there is an innovation budget for how many things that you want to shove into your product that are new and exciting. And new and exciting can always mean horrible to be on call for. Right? So giving developers autonomy to make this decision will rein in the worst reflexes of just shoving in new stuff. So that's your innovation budget. The flip side of this is picking power tools. And I could have sworn that Johannes has seen my slides before he presented his. So what are power tools? Power tools are force multipliers. Right? Instead of just using a screwdriver, we want to have a screw-driving robot. Right? And we realize in the job of a mechanic, driving screws is only a tiny portion of the job, right? But picking the right tool and picking the most powerful tool for the job is an important part of this. In my free time, I'm a bicycle mechanic, and in basically all do-it-yourself communities, there's this wisdom which says when you lose a tool, replace it with one that is only half as expensive. Right? This is cutting out the stuff that you don't need, that you don't pay attention to. But on the other hand, when you break a tool, and you're breaking tools because you're using it too much, that's when you replace it with one that is twice as expensive. And this is a great lesson that helps you picking your technology stack, right? And a couple of the power tools that we are using, HTTP, Fastly CDN, GitHub, and that includes GitHub Copilot. Interesting story, GitHub Copilot is actually using a part of the software that we've wrote for this product. So it's a circular dependency here. Cloudflare Workers, CoreLogix for logging, Amazon Simple Storage Service, and JavaScript. Right? And JavaScript, you might say, is that a real programming language? Yes, it's a real programming language, and it has become a power tool. So this is how we are. This is the stack that we've evolved to, but it's not a final stack. Right? We've gone through 5 major architectural revisions in the last 5 years, and I can guarantee you that there will be another 5 in the next 10 years. Build the diamond stack. What's the diamond stack? The diamond stack, right? Diamond is just carbon. It's the most common material in the Earth's crust. So use things that are super common, super simple, and S3 is probably the best example for this, right? Amazon S3 is the most widely used cloud service in the world, and it is a diamond because it has been hardened under pressure. So you want to have something that is rock solid, that is hard as diamond, that doesn't crush under pressure, but that gets better under pressure. Additionally, you want to have things, and you want to create things that are small in scale, that are easy to handle. Again, if we take something like, let's say, a CDN. Right? A CDN is just a glorified cache. And as long as you can describe every every single piece in your stack as this is just a glorified, then you have a diamond stack. Because what's a diamond if not just a glorified lump of coal? But the real trick about this is that under pressure, you're taking something that is commodity and you're turning it into something that has immense value. And this value multiplier is something that you want to create. Right? Software that is cheap to build, cheap to run, and unlocks tremendous customer value. Final point, iterate. There's no version 1 that was ever good. But as long as you have the ability to move on and to build the next version, you can come up with software that is fantastic. Oh, I lied, of course. There's one more thing. Don't forget to launch. And what we did, we launched Edge Delivery Services in Adobe Experience Manager as a cloud service with document-based editing. Just by the length of the name, you know that it's serious enterprise software. We launched that in September. Since then, our customers have launched more than 300 websites, 50 million page views served, 130,000 experiments run. The biggest site that is running on our software is adobe.com, so the adobe.com homepage. Another reason to be a bit worried about the pager that I'm carrying. And it has created tremendous value for our customers in the sense of creating websites that are faster, creating websites where you can publish much faster, and finally, where the development cost of developing and launching new sites has been shrunk. So these are my lessons from new product development at Adobe, and I thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Lars Trieloff, principal at Adobe. That was very interesting.